told her dad was on the phone. So.
Hey everybody, we're just about to start here. I'm just going to give it just another 20 seconds just to make sure everybody can join. Just as you're coming on, and we'll try to do it too, but we'll try to get everybody to just mute your mic when you come on. Like I say, if you happen to miss it, we'll do it as well. But 20 seconds, thanks. Okay, it's 6:32 now. I'm sure a few more people will be joining us. Thanks for everybody for coming out to this wonderful, bright, sunny, warm evening. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. So we're going to talk this evening about University Avenue and some opportunities to look at improvements to that street. My name is Tim O'Reilly. I'm with the City of St. John. We also have on the phone a couple other members of city staff as well that have helped with this project. Catherine Shannon, who's a member of our transportation team. She's actually going to help with just making sure we keep some good notes for the meeting. Hi, Catherine. We also have Mark Dion, who's actually the general manager of our parking commission. He's on the call as well. Hey there, Mark. We are going to have Mike Hugenholtz join us very shortly. Mike is also the Commissioner of Public Works and Transportation for the City of St. John, who I report to. So what I want to do is I'm going to share my screen and just go through how we're going to proceed with this evening. Okay, hopefully we can all see that screen now with a PowerPoint presentation. So just a bit of an agenda as to how we're going to go through this for this evening. So we just completed some introductions. I hope to hear from most or all of you on this call as well. So I'm sure we'll know each other, and there's several people on the call as well that I see familiar names we've talked to before. So welcome everybody who I've discussed with before. The other thing with this meeting as well is we are going to be recording it. So we're going to be providing this recording on our city website. Just in case there are people who weren't able to attend this evening, we want to provide that to the public in addition to the slides themselves in order to have a chance to provide input on this opportunity. Just in terms of this meeting format, so I'm sure most of you are similar to myself, as we're hoping to get back to some normalcy here and be able to do these types of meetings face to face and in a large room and have a real great discussion. But obviously during COVID times, we're trying to be extra cautious, and whenever we look to do these types of public meetings at this time, we're doing them in a virtual environment to keep extra safe social distancing. So with this virtual enterprise here, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to go through a little bit of a step-by-step. So what we're using is a product called Microsoft Teams for this meeting. And you'll see up in the top bar, I guess, on the screen, you'll see a third icon from the left is a microphone. That will mute and unmute your microphone on your computer. What we'll do is we'll ask everybody to keep themselves on mute, and at the time when you want to discuss, you can click that microphone button, and you'll be able to start talking at that point. And then once you're done speaking, you can put yourself back to mute again. To the left of that is a picture of a camera. That picture there just indicates as well your video. So it'll show your video on the screen, and if you click it, it'll show you, not show you on the screen. It's probably best. I think it's what a couple people have video on that. That's fine. We can see the screens as well, but certainly if you're for the most of the meeting, it's probably advisable to put yourself on both mute as well as not show your screen. So you can click that if you'd like to. And then the only other button along that top screen that will be useful to you is the third one from the left. That's a little picture of a hand and a smiley face. So if you just wave your cursor over top of that, you'll actually see a few icons below it, including a little bit of a hand symbol. So that you can click that if you want to speak, and we'll ask you to use that format. I see everybody along the right-hand side of my screen, so I can see who wants to raise their hand to say something. That'll be very useful towards the latter half of the meeting in terms of the discussion that we're going to have towards the end. So that's pretty much in a nutshell in terms of the format. And like I say, we'll ask everybody to stay on mute, try to keep their microphones off, their video off, and as well, you can raise your hands when you want to talk. So with that, I'll stop just for a second. Does anybody have any questions on the process so far? You can certainly unmute yourself or use your hand. All right. I do see somebody type something, so I'm just going to check that really quick just to see. Okay, good. So next on the agenda, I don't see any questions. We're going to go right into a little bit of a presentation on what we're going to planning to do, or some ideas for University Avenue. So we're going to go through that next. It'll be a few slides to spur up some ideas as to what we're looking at for the street. And that'll generate the most important part of the meeting, which is number 5 and number 6 on the agenda, which is a really good roundtable discussion on opportunities for University Avenue. And then we're also going to provide some opportunities to provide feedback, even beyond tonight, even beyond the discussion we're going to have. So that's it. The only other kind of ground rule, or I guess you want to call it, is we'll try to keep the meeting focused. Anything to do with transportation around University Avenue is certainly open game, but we'll try to be very specific too around that specific topic. So any more questions on that overall agenda before I jump into some slides? Okay, don't see any hands. Don't hear anybody saying anything, so we'll jump right into it. So what we're talking about this evening is University Avenue, and so up on the screen right now, I'm sure you all know where University Avenue is, but I've highlighted that in red on the screen towards the left. I guess a couple things with this slide is first of all, I will be showing some close-up images of University Avenue towards the western end, towards Millage Avenue. But what we're looking at for University Avenue tonight, a lot of it is going to be applicable all the way from one end of University Avenue, from Millage Avenue, all the way to Sandy Point Road towards the other end. So to keep that in mind as we go through the discussion. The other thing I'll discuss with this particular slide is this image is actually from our transportation plan, which we're just in the process of finalizing. Millage Avenue, University Avenue is actually identified in our transportation plan as a priority cycling route. The green line within that red line on University Avenue is indicative of a bike lane, or in this case, it'll be something called a buffered bike lane on University Avenue. So that's what we're talking about this evening, is University Avenue and some opportunities around it. I want to show as well, again, just for a little bit of context, what's up on the screen right now is University Avenue itself, but more close up towards the Millage Avenue end. I'm going to use this image quite a bit this evening, just to show some of the detailed changes that we're suggesting for University Avenue. So you'll see this image with different variations of it throughout a few slides I'll be going through. So up on the screen right now, again, Millage Avenue towards the west end of University Avenue is that vertical street to the left there. And of course, University Avenue is the horizontal one shown on the screen. Tim Hortons is just to the upper side and the Wendy's entrance, as you can see. And then the exit to the Shanex on Bloom Street is also just to the north side of University Avenue in this image. And then to the south, you'll see the entrance to Jean Coutu, the pharmacy, just again on the opposite side of the Tim Hortons and Wendy's driveway. So this shows the physical, I guess, environment of University Avenue. So it does have sidewalks on it on both sides. The separation between Millage Avenue and University Avenue, there's actually a physical traffic island, which provides for a right-hand slip lane from Millage Avenue onto University Avenue. University Avenue also has center medians down the middle of it. So as you can see in green here, there are medians along the center of the road, which get with gaps in it for various driveways and entrances along University Avenue. So obviously you'll see the gap here in order to get into either Tim Hortons or Jean Coutu. So at the bottom of this image as well, you'll see a cross section of University Avenue in terms of that hard infrastructure. So again, the two sidewalks on either end, the paved surface in the middle, which is obviously for active transportation and motorists, and then of course the center being the islands. Okay, and so one of the things we're going to be discussing as part of this opportunity for University Avenue, at least for the short term, is trying to minimize the cost of making some improvements. So we're going to try to work within the boundaries, I guess, of the hard infrastructure as much as possible with what we're talking about this evening. So really wanted to start with this as kind of a basis for the discussion. What's shown on the screen right now is that same image of University Avenue, but the traffic infrastructure or traffic lines, etc., that are overlaid on this part of University Avenue. I show this as 2019 simply because we've actually made a couple of improvements, which we'll be going through in a few minutes, even in year 2020. But as you can see here, there's a bunch of blue lines on the screen. You can pretend these are the white lines, the different lane division lines. I showed them in blue just to provide them as a bit more visible than what they would show in white. So University Avenue is divided into a 4-lane cross section for the majority of it, as well as the gaps in between the islands are an opportunity for people to pull in, almost creating a 5th lane on University Avenue, wherever these entrances are located. The 2 outside lanes on University Avenue, and we made this change, I believe, in 2014 or 15, are actually shared lanes between both motorists and cyclists. And so that's as it is today. You'll see more towards the left. There are crosswalks at the intersection of Millage Avenue and University Avenue, crossing that particular intersection. And again, one more detail is that right-hand slip lane from Millage Avenue going on to University Avenue. Basically, vehicles from that lane have its own lane without having to merge into other traffic on University Avenue as it currently sits. The other point, which will come into play here as well, is the, oh, sorry, Mark, Dion, did you want to say something with your hand up?
Sorry, Tim, I don't mean to interrupt your presentation. Councillor McKenzie is trying to join.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
unable to forward the message or the invitation, so if someone could send it along, my apologies for interrupting.
No problem. Just hold for a second, everybody. I'm just going to put myself on mute, and I'm going to try to do this right now because I'm not sure if anybody else has the ability to do it. Just give me 1 second, please.
Tim, I think I sent it to him and it's working.
Thanks, Mark. It did work.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good to have you on the call there, Councillor McKenzie. Okay, so I'll jump right back into it again. So again, this slide shows the current traffic lanes on University Avenue. The only other detail I'll mention is the location of a transit bus stop, which currently exists. It's shown in purple on the slide right now, and its current location just on University Avenue beyond Millage Avenue. So that's in its current location. I guess the only other point I'll make is the medians along the center of University Avenue are delineated as well In addition to the curbs, yellow lines that just indicate the presence of the end of the lane. Those yellow lines will come into play a bit later in the conversation. But basically in 2019, so 2 years ago, that's what this street looked like. So why are we talking about University Avenue in the first place? So I guess one of the benefits I have in my position as the city's traffic engineer is I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of the community about traffic issues in different parts of the community. So certainly challenges on University Avenue that I've heard. Probably speaking to some of you about these over the years. One of them is just the congestion concerns around the western end of Millage Avenue. So just east of Millage Avenue. Again, we have several driveways, the pharmacy, the restaurants across the street, as well as the transit stop. It's all in a very close proximity to each other. So some concerns there with the general congestion in that part of University Avenue. Again, just concerns with the proximity of that transit shelter being so close to Millage Avenue, with that being a right-hand slip lane onto the street from Millage Avenue. And some concerns from different community members about the safety of the pedestrian crossings across University Avenue. So again, quite a wide street for sure, and just concerns with crossing the street. So of course, when you have challenges, you also have opportunities that come along with it. So first of all, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, University Avenue is an important cycling route within the community. It's part of the Campus Harbor Connection bike route. For the Campus Harbor Connection bike route forms a south-north connection throughout the city, almost like a biking arterial. And then there's an east-west connection via the Trans-Canada Trail. So University Avenue is the northern part of this Campus Harbor Connection bike route that connects all the way to the south to Harbor Passage. There's an opportunity to align better with the municipal plan. So this section of the city is a primary development area, intensification area for future growth. So there's an opportunity there. As I talked earlier, there's alignment with our new transportation plan, Move SJ, in terms of the cycling facilities that are planned for the future. As I mentioned, University Avenue is quite wide. The caveat, of course, being the median median in between. So we have a bit of space to work with in terms of some changes. We are investigating a project funding opportunity. So we're actually partnered with the St. John's Cycling Club to actually have a funding application into a federal program called the Healthy Communities Initiative. We have that application in now, which would actually fund the project that which we're talking about this evening. We haven't heard word back yet. I believe it's sometime in early May that we're going to hear back for the funding for that particular project. But we have our fingers crossed to be able to fund this. And again, the opportunity as well, just overall partnerships. So again, the community at large, including on this call, the partnership we've held with the St. John's Cycling Club, both in terms of advancing cycling in the city and specifically on the street of University Avenue, partnered with St. John Transit in terms of opportunities for that bus stop and shelter, and worked very closely with the police force in terms of identifying traffic safety issues in the street. We always try to look when we're trying to make improvements to streets to best practices, look at the data that we have available to us, and just some experience we've had across the municipality with making improvements to different streets. So again, the feedback that we've heard so far and we'll hear tonight is going to be very important. In terms of the volume on University Avenue, so typically you need about 20,000 vehicles a day to justify 4 lanes of traffic on a particular street. So we did some counts, an extensive one back in 2012, where the volume of University Avenue, and this was actually counted more close towards that western end, towards Millage Avenue, was about 6,200 vehicles per day back in the 2012 count. And we actually did a very comprehensive count over about a 5-month period on University Avenue, which is really just ending now, believe it or not. But we found over that 2-year time frame, the daily count on average was about 3,500 vehicles per day. I put COVID in brackets there, so obviously COVID likely has a big impact on that reduction in volumes between the 2012 count and the 2020 and 2021 count. And again, that count was actually done further to the east on University Avenue, closer to, I believe it's Christopher Court is where we completed that count. But then in a nutshell, you know, the volumes in University Avenue are well below what you need to provide a good level of service with 4 lanes of traffic. So going down to 2 vehicle lanes shouldn't have a significant impact on traffic movement. We also looked at the speed data on University Avenue. So we have a traffic calming policy for the city, and for a street like University Avenue, if the average speeds were anywhere 48 kilometers an hour or over, that would warrant traffic calming a particular street. So the actual speed limit, or actually average speeds on University Avenue, are actually closer to 55 kilometers an hour. So from a traffic calming perspective, it certainly justifies looking at in terms of getting those speeds down compared to what the speed limit is and as per the policy that we have in place. We haven't had some look with our police force at the collision data, again, particularly towards that western end, towards Millage Avenue. I don't have the details of those counts at the moment. However, when we've reviewed those several months ago with the police force, there were a couple of trends that showed us. So over the past three to 5 years in that time frame, we had seen an increase in accidents that have occurred, again, closer to that Millage Avenue end. That's kind of one trend that we picked out. The other trend wasn't significant, but we did notice there were a number of rear end collisions on University Avenue. So cases where vehicles were stopping and then vehicles behind that didn't stop in time and rear-ended the other vehicle. So we did take a look at the collision data on University Avenue. In each one of these cases, we refer to national guidelines from the Transportation Association of Canada. That's the abbreviation there, TAC. So we look at those in terms of best practices on a particular street. And we've had some lessons learned in the city as well. So, I mean, I've been doing my job now since 2008. So we've had opportunities to look at different changes to streets. We've actually done road diets on Metcalfe Street, sections of Somerset Street, as well as sections of Millage Avenue. And we've had quite a bit of success with that. A few hiccups along the way. Early on, we've implemented it. But you probably talk to anybody now, and you probably don't see much of a difference between traffic flowing in the street now and when those streets actually used to be 4 lanes on those streets before, again, that 2013 or 14 timeframe. So we do have a bit of success in lessons learned in St. John in terms of how we can move projects like this forward. Okay, so again, I'm going to show again. I showed this slide. This is a very duplicate slide, so we'll go over this really quick. This is the exact slide you saw just a few minutes ago, the current traffic components as of 2019 on University Avenue. And I'm going to go through a couple of the issues, again, just surmising based on some of the data that we have in front of us from the collisions, as well as some of the great feedback we've heard so far on the street. So again, one of the issues which I talked about early on at this western end of University Avenue, and it's shown by the red car on the screen, is there's this free flow lane from Millage Avenue onto University Avenue. So any cars that are making this right-hand turn, again, it's a sweeping right turn, so you don't necessarily have to slow down a lot to make that turn. And the other issue is it's unimpeded traffic flow. So cars from Millage Avenue going onto University Avenue do not have to merge to other traffic. They have their own lane to slip into. So that's kind of one observation that we've noted. The other issue, again, I've mentioned this transit stop being in close proximity to Millage Avenue. So certainly part of the concern we have are those cars that are making that right-hand turn from Millage onto University Avenue at times when buses are stopping and letting people on and off the buses. So certainly some of those early concerns from police accidents, the traffic accidents about rear-end collisions are certainly added because of some of these issues around the stopping buses. And of course, as I mentioned, in some places, University Avenue, it's actually a 5-lane cross section. So here's an example where you can have a bus, the approaching vehicle from Millage on University Avenue, a car in the second inside lane, and then even a third car on the very inside lane to that. And sometimes multiple vehicles trying to make that left-hand turn from University Avenue into the Tim Hortons driveway. Compounded with that, obviously, you have vehicles that are coming out of Tim Hortons. And of course, we have the pharmacy across the street where vehicles are trying to get in and out of there as well. So a lot of congestion, a lot of things happening in that very small area, and a lot of lanes to merge in and out of. and opportunities for cars to be passing each other. So getting to the, I guess, to the crux of the meeting, in terms of some options we're looking at are up on the screen right now. So just quickly, I'm just going to go back and forth. So again, this is what it was in 2019. These are some of the options we're looking at in either year 2021 or 2022. So we're proposing a road diet for University Avenue, which would mean you're taking that 4-lane cross section, 4 vehicle lanes, and converting it down to 2 vehicle lanes, so 1 in each direction, and converting some of that space over to wide bike lanes, dedicated bike lanes on either side of University Avenue. They'd be about 2.1 meters total in width, those bike lanes, when you take into account the buffered bike lanes. We're proposing to actually widen out those yellow center lines around the medians to create a bit of a traffic calming effect with that remaining 1 vehicle lane in each direction. We're going to maintain the center area for any left-turning vehicles that want to get into Tim Hortons, the Jean Coutu, or any other places along University Avenue. We're going to, so this right-hand turn from Millage Avenue to University Avenue, you see now a few yield signs. We've actually installed those in 2020. So now vehicles actually have to yield before they make the right-hand turn from Millage to University Avenue. And by actually bringing the vehicle lanes down to 1 single lane on University Avenue, now those vehicles that will be turning right from Millage to University Avenue would have to be merged into the 1 remaining lane on University Avenue. So it creates an opportunity for vehicles to have to slow down and merge instead of having that straight access on University Avenue. We're looking at, we're going to maintain the turn lanes at both Millage Avenue as well as down to Sandy Point Road. So you can see here the bike lanes are actually proposed to stop just short of the intersection here at Millage Avenue. Will happen down at Sandy Point Road, and we'll reestablish the through left and then the right, the left-hand lane and then the through right lane from University Avenue onto Millage. And we'll do the same thing down at Sandy Point Road as well. Certainly the traffic on University Avenue can be handled with 1 lane in each direction, but we recognize that we can still have bottlenecks at the intersections themselves. So that's planned there. Dean Price, I just saw your hand come up. Is there something you wanted to mention right now?
Yeah, hi Tim. What are you proposing in this option for separating the cars from the bikes? Is it just a painted lane or is it a curb?
Yeah, well, I'll be showing that in a couple of slides there, Dean, what we're proposing for it. It's going to be a buffered bike lane is what we're proposing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll certainly be happy to take a few questions here or there through the presentation. But certainly what I'll be planning to do is as we get to the end of the presentation, we'll have lots of time to ask questions. We'll have lots of time to flip between some of the slides to answer questions. So I see a few hands up. If they're urgent at this moment in the presentation, I'll be certainly happy to answer those. But if you're okay with it, we'll hold off towards the end of the presentation. Okay. So we are looking at bike boxes as well at both ends of the street. So you can see here the bike box turning from University Avenue onto Millage. There'll be an opportunity for cyclists that want to make that left-hand turn to wait in that lane in that bike box. We are going to move the transit shelter. So again, it's present location on the one side of the pharmacy. We're actually moving down. You can see the new purple box on the slide further down on Millage, on University Avenue to get it away from the intersection. So we're planning to move that down that way as well. Again, in partnership with the Transit Commission, that'll get rid of some of that congestion near the intersection. We're planning to install 2 signalized crosswalks on University Avenue. So one actually shown here on the screen down at Bloom Street. We're going to install with lights at that location a crosswalk. And again, that'll serve a couple of purposes, including meeting up with the sidewalk comes out on Bloom Street for anybody coming out of the Shannex, but it'll also be an opportunity for anybody who is trying to cross the street when they get on off the bus. If they're headed in this direction, it'll be usable for anybody using transit as well. And then also we're planning to install a signalized crossing down at Varsity Street, where the hospital entrance is. So again, further down on University Avenue than what's on the screen here. I do note as well with the reduction of vehicle lanes, again, coming from the 2 lanes in each direction down to 1 lane in each direction, we are reducing the vehicle lanes that are crossing various crosswalks that are along University Avenue. So we have existing crosswalks, I know, at the Gorman Arena. We have one down closer to Polaris Court, I believe. And again, the existing one at down at Varsity Street in the hospital. Again, each one of those crosswalks will benefit by the reduction of vehicle lanes that cross them. Certainly one of the issues with crosswalks is when you have 2 vehicle lanes in each same direction. That's a real concern from a safety perspective, because you can have situations where a car might stop in 1 lane thinking they're going to let somebody cross the street, and then a car can pass them to the right. So with bringing it down to 1 lane each direction, it reduces those conflict points where somebody may be crossing the street to get from one side to the other. And as I already mentioned, we're making those changes down from Village Avenue onto University Avenue by making them merge into a single lane, as well as the yield signs, which we installed actually in 2020. In terms of a few of the details of the designs, so to the left, again, you've probably seen these crosswalks around the city already. So at both Bloom Street as well as the Varsity Hospital entrance, we're looking at installing they're called rectangular rapid flashing beacon crosswalks. They're wireless and solar powered, so very easy to install and inexpensive compared to the traditional overhead signal systems. So these are the designs we're proposing at those 2 locations. And then to answer Dean's question, MoveSJ does recommend bike lanes on University Avenue based on the risk profile, but we're ramping it up a bit to install what's called buffered bike lanes on University Avenue. So as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, we're actually installing 2 lines to separate vehicles from bikes, and those will be about 0.3 meters apart. So the entire width of the bike lane will be 1.8 meters plus the 0.3 meters of the buffered area to give a net or a gross width of 2.1 meters for these cycling lanes. Again, in line with MoveSJ. And again, at the approach, at least at this point in time, until there's an opportunity to reconstruct University Avenue, provide a very economical solution to improve the safety of cyclists. Up on the screen right now is this is not part of our 2021 or 2022 plan, but maybe something we'll look at in the future if the Millage and University Avenue intersection when it does get reconstructed at some point in the future. So what we're looking at as a potential is called a smart right turn channel. And in this case here, again, you can see on the left-hand side, you have that sweeping right-hand turn where sight lines are somewhat constrained, and you have that ability to drive at higher speeds around that right-hand turn. So to the right is what we're calling these smart right-hand turn channels. You line up the right turn more 90 degrees to the street you're entering onto. And then that red hatched area to the right is actually a depressed concrete area, just in case we have any large trucks that need to make the right-hand turn. But it's a traffic calming solution, gets cars to slow down as they make that right-hand turn, and again, provides better sight lines as they're making that merge onto Millage Avenue, and in fact, improve sight lines for anybody trying to cross that crosswalk to get over to the traffic island. I took a quick screenshot. This is actually one of these smart right-hand turn channels up in the city of Fredericton. This is at the intersection of Prospect and Regent. And I just took a quick snapshot from Google Street View, real savior in terms of having good pictures. So they've installed a number of these smart right turn channels in different parts of the city of Fredericton. And this is just a real live example of one of these. Again, you see to the right, the red concrete. Again, kind of a depressed but slightly heightened area for trucks to turn right, but again, more of a straight access for vehicles to gain access to the street. Again, that's something for a future potential opportunity. So this is where we come to the most important part of the meeting, which is turning it over to everybody that we have with us tonight and asking, what do you think of it? And so I have a few questions up on the screen to generate this. Did we miss anything in terms of the traffic safety issues? Do you think that proposed solutions would solve those concerns that you might have? Are there any other solutions? Are there any other solutions we haven't considered yet? Do you like this idea of the road diet, but bringing it from 4 lanes to 2 lanes and providing the space over dedicated bike lanes? What do you think about the 2 crosswalks we're proposing? And then again, just the overall plan. Do you think it would work? So I want to open it up. We will have an opportunity, as I mentioned, to provide feedback beyond this evening. We're going to open it up until May 7th, where anybody can actually email us at feedback@stjohn.ca after tonight as well. But with that, I'm going to open it up to questions, and I see some hands being raised. So again, I'll call upon people, and you can unmute yourself and ask your question, make your comment, etc. And again, before I go on to, when you're done asking your question, if I can ask you to lower your hand as well. So it's the same process to raise your hand. You just click the same button to lower it. That just helps me manage knowing who still has a question to ask or a comment to make. So first on my screen, again, probably in no particular order, but the order that I see on my screen is Jake Stackhouse. So Jake, if you don't mind asking your question or making your comment, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, Tim. Thanks. Just a quick question. Have you considered that median on the left side that's closest to Millage Avenue? Have you considered shortening that a little bit to create a larger left-hand turning lane? The reason why I ask is oftentimes that Tim Hortons drive-through pours out. And with 1 lane, it might make it just a little bit more difficult for people to get by. It might impede traffic.
Well, that's a great comment, Jake. When the Jean Coutu was first put in, we actually did pull that island back a bit. The constraint right now is there's actually a street light right at the very end of that median as it currently exists. So not that we can't do it in the future, and I do appreciate what you're saying, and I've seen it myself. There are certainly times where more than a single or 2 vehicles line up to turn left, which spills out into that other lane. So we will mark that down as an opportunity, but it'll likely take a bit of investment, especially with that street light that would have to be moved off that island. But great comment.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next I see is Gina. Gina, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi there. My name is Gina Wilkins, and I live on Candlewood Lane, and I'm the property manager volunteer for that neighborhood. So I have a number of comments, and I'll just go very quickly through some of them. The first is that calling sidewalks down at this end of University Avenue is really flattering what you have there, because it's asphalt that's almost at the same grade as the road. Very dangerous. In darkness, you can't distinguish the sidewalks from the road. So that's just a comment. I really like you've recognized many of the concerns I've had and have expressed before to various people, councillors, John McKenzie and yourself, about the issues at this end of University Avenue, because it's really accurate what you've described. I found the 55-kilometer-an-hour measurement a bit of a certainly not what I see further up University Avenue. That might be what you see down at this end when you're approaching the lights, but certainly when you're coming down University Avenue and you get to Woodhaven, people are going a lot more quickly than 55 kilometers an hour. There are 2 speed limit signs on University Avenue. One is right there as you come around that corner, that merge. And the other one is at the very top of University Avenue when you come off of Sandy Point Road. And beside that, there's nothing along the whole length of University Avenue to remind people that they should drive more slowly. Certainly going down to 1 lane would help with that a lot, I think, because people can't pass each other for one thing, which would really help a lot, because I see people coming whipping down there at 85 kilometers an hour on a regular basis. And it's a real concern for the people coming out of Candlewood Lane, because there's also a little dip at Woodhaven. So we can't see the cars coming if we're in a smaller vehicle. So that's dangerous. The crosswalk at the Gorman Marine is also terribly dangerous. Nobody ever stops. You can put your arm out, you can wave. And when you do that, people wave back. It's great. They're very friendly, but they don't stop. And we have seniors in the neighborhood who walk across over to Shannocks on a regular basis, and including one lady who's clinically blind. And I just dread the day when she steps out and doesn't realize there's a car coming and they don't stop. With regards to the merge, I take what you're saying, and I think it's great. I'm a little concerned that when people are coming around that where the yield signs are now, that they still run the danger of running into somebody on a bicycle, because they're really turning into the bicycle lane. So the proposal that I had and had mentioned many times to people is that you get rid of that whole little triangular thing there altogether, and you make that a stop on a red light and turn right intersection, which would also allow you to get rid of that light standard that's in the middle of the median there, perhaps. So in other words, people would come up to a regular full stop at the corner of Millage and University Avenue, and when the opportunity arose, because you could make a right turn on red, you would turn right, and you wouldn't be going as quickly as you would be if you were coming through a yield or a merge, which is what we have now. So that's one other thing that I really think that would help a lot. I take your point about the truck turning, but if that little thing didn't jut out as far as it does there, I can't remember what you call that little gray thing that's to the left of the merge, the slip lane. If that wasn't there altogether, there would certainly be an opportunity to make that intersection a little bit wider so that trucks can make the turn. And this is just a question. If you're moving the bus stop, which I think is a fabulous idea, I hope you're going to take the one out that's at the corner of Candlewood Lane, because basically the bus would just get started and have to stop again. So I'm assuming that one would go. I did want to point out too that maybe back in 2019, Bloom Street was one way when only exiting, but it's two-way now, because cars go in and out now. That one-way sign has been taken down and cars go in and out of that. So if the city doesn't know that, they may want to look into it, because it's now a two-way street. What else? I guess that's about it. I really do have a lot of concerns, to be honest with you, about what you call a sidewalk. We've seen the upper areas of University Avenue get repaved over and over and over again. Nothing has ever happened down at this end. I find it surprising that when Jean Coutu was put in, and I'm a huge fan, probably their first customer, but the city didn't require that they put proper sidewalk along their property as they do when other developments go in. That should have been thought of and should have been part of the development of that piece of property there, because the sidewalks are just, like, as I say, they're pretty much non-existent. And you've got a curve further up University Avenue where I have actually seen cars come around and drive onto the sidewalk, coming down University Avenue, not so much up. So that's a big concern for me. But anyway, I will just say that the other thing too is traffic flow. You've got 4 apartment buildings with a possibility of 5th at the top of Noel. There's probably up to 200 units up there. So measuring the traffic further up University Avenue towards the hospital probably doesn't give you a very realistic view of how many cars are at the intersection, because a lot of people who live up there, some of them do work at the hospital and would turn left, but a lot of them turn right to go uptown. So there's a heck of a lot of cars up there. There's a heck of a lot of units up there, and there's a lot of traffic coming down Woodhaven, and it's all coming out onto University Avenue right now. And like I say, I bet if you watch, the majority of them are turning right, not left. So that that kind of your traffic count there, I think it probably would change if you measured it somewhere between Woodhaven and Millage. And just finally, I do want to remind you that I represent 64 homes that live in the townhouse area there, where there's a lot of discussion, a lot of concern from the people who live there about a lot of things on University Avenue. It's very dangerous for us coming out onto University Avenue from the upper end of Candlewood, which is something else we'd like to look at in the future, which is changing the direction of our road, but that's not for tonight's discussion. That's for some other time. But thank you for giving me an opportunity to point out the things that I noticed. I really appreciate it. And this is really, really great. Really great.
Well, thanks a lot, Gina. I was writing frantically all your great comments there. In terms of the sidewalk condition on that section of University Avenue, we recognize that section of University Avenue needs to be fully reconstructed for a number of different reasons. And so certainly when that time comes, when that street can be reconstructed, absolutely the intent is to not only have the sidewalks that are actually height above the road, but have them constructed as proper constructed sidewalks. So definitely, I mean, I know Councillor McKenzie was on the call. We were fully aware of the condition and concerns of the sidewalk. Definitely speeding, I take your note. We identify that there is speeding there for sure. We'll take a note there about the speed limit signs, and again, we'll see if we can make any improvements there. Certainly a problem we have across the city, and it's more of an education thing than anything, is that issue about motorists' responsibility, I'll say it over and over again, to yield to pedestrians at a marked crosswalk. It is their responsibility when a pedestrian wants to cross the street to stop and yield to them. We do these traffic tips at the city where we work with the communications department to put out messages to the public that are kind of common. And we'll make a note about adding this one to make sure people are aware that that's a responsibility. Certainly that right-hand turn opportunities, again, when we get the opportunity to reconstruct the University and Millage intersection, we'll take a look at what we can do there, in addition to the notion of the right-hand slip lane. Mark Dion's on the call from transit, so certainly we'll review the other remaining transit stops, including the one down at Candlewood. We'll make a note of that Bloom Street situation and see, I guess, if and when the change over to two-way traffic. And just a final comment there. So that traffic count that we completed in 2012, which you can see on the screen right now, was actually taken at Millage Avenue. That's 6,200 vehicles a day. So that's University Avenue, basically just east of Millage Avenue. So it's all the traffic that would be generated from, again, Tim Hortons, Ajonkatu, plus any traffic coming from Woodhaven and those areas there. So
comment on that. Just don't want to interrupt you, but most of those apartment buildings up on Noel have been constructed since 2020.
Yeah. Good point, Gina.
Like it's just a huge amount of traffic coming out of there.
Yeah, great.
So
excellent. Okay, thanks, Gina.
Yep, thank you.
All righty. Next, I have Colin White. Colin.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
I can hear you okay, Colin.
All right, now I would like to start off and say that I am a student at UNB, actually. I live in the Milledgeville area, and this year I've actually been biking up to the university. It's my first year. And I do not feel safe at all on my way biking up. It's the current situation is somewhat of an afterthought that people just came along and they painted a picture of a bike on the ground and said, you can ride here now. It didn't really change anything. Now, as for the current plan that you have, the new plan, I do agree with the lane reduction down to 2 lanes from 4. However, I do not agree with the layout that has been proposed here. One of the reasons why I don't like this current layout is because the bicycle traffic and the car traffic is still very much combined. Painted lines on the street do not make cyclists feel safe. It's not something that people would want their kids to ride on. People would be okay with their kids riding in a car, walking on the sidewalk, except as we just heard, I guess some of them are not very well down by the Jean Coutu. But an idea that I had would be to have all of the 2 lanes of car traffic on the side of the median by the Jean Coutu. So you still get that car traffic, and it also would have a traffic calming effect. When people have cars coming at them beside them, it makes people more cautious. They don't feel as comfortable because they have this big wide road. They don't have to worry about going too slow, because even if they crash, the oncoming traffic is on the other side of this median, and if I go to the other side, I just hit a cyclist or a pedestrian. There's not much of a danger, so there's not much of a reason to go slower. This having both lanes of traffic on the side of the median to the Jean Coutu would also make it so that you do not need to have, you can keep the slip lane coming from Village Avenue to University Avenue. It doesn't affect anything there. Now, as for the other side, what would you do there? You have 2 lanes of space that you don't have any thing to do with. And what I was thinking is to have a 2-lane bike lane on the other side. Now there's 1 lane left, a little bit more than 1 lane, because we've used 1 lane on the other side for bikes, and the other side is for cars. Now you have 1 extra lane, which I was thinking perhaps you could take a bit back on the median, and plus bikes don't take up a whole lane, and perhaps you could squeeze in a separate area for the buses. And now you've also solved the issue of the cars coming off of Village Avenue onto University and immediately being confronted with a bus, because now the buses are not there. That's the idea that I've had in my head. And my main point is that painted bike lanes they're very weak improvement. I really like to think of it as, would you like your children to bike on this bike path? And even on Somerset Street, where they have the painted bike lanes, it doesn't feel very safe to a lot of people. You still see people riding their bikes down the sidewalk. But cyclists want to feel separated, including myself. That'd be all my comments. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Colin. Excellent comments. You can tell you put a lot of thought into this for sure. Again, I'm of the mind of you too. We're going to look at a very similar street on the east side of the city on Heatherway, and so we're going to look at opportunities there as well in terms of road diets. One of the issues with moving all of the traffic over to one side of the road on University Avenue would be in these areas where the left-hand turning traffic is high. So one of the issues that we have here, if you can picture what's on the screen right now, a vehicle in that be the curb lane, I guess, wanting to turn left into Morton's. If there's any type of delay in those vehicles turning, the vehicles behind it would just be stacking up, and that's very close to that intersection with Millage Avenue. I mentioned earlier that University Avenue is, this section needs to be reconstructed at one point, and that will be another opportunity for us to revisit. Can we get rid of these center median islands, narrow down the road down to, again, a 3-lane cross section, provide some space on one or both sides for separated cycling facilities. So that will be another opportunity, but we'll take a second look at your suggestion of moving traffic all over to one side. That's just a couple of cautions. The other thing I'll note too, Colin, really quickly is, we've already suggested this to Common Council, and it will likely be part of our final recommendations with Move Australia Transportation Plan, is to provide some better opportunities to allow cyclists more ability to use what's traditionally known as sidewalks. which are obviously off-road facilities that are available. And with that, creates more opportunities to create that separation. But absolutely, we'll take your note, Colin. We'll take a closer look at seeing if we can create that separation for vehicles over to one side. So thank you very much.
One thing I'd like to add
Sure.
very quickly is what you said of the issue of people stopping to turn left into Tim Hortons and Wendy's.
Yeah.
Is perhaps closing that entrance and moving the entrance to get into Tim Hortons and Wendy's to off of Millage Avenue. Now you have more room for cars to line up without getting on the road. And also, it is a right turn instead of a left turn.
Perfect. Excellent. Thanks, Colin.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And good luck in your studies, by the way, if you're still in school.
I just finished the other day. Thank you.
Oh, congratulations. Scott Pavey, you're next.
Hi. First of all, I just wanted to thank you, Tim, for organizing this this session, and I think the comments so far have been really good. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I can see you put a lot of thought into this, and so I appreciate that. I'm Scott Pavey, by the way. I'm a professor at UNB, and I like to bike, and I, like Colin, don't feel safe. By and large, biking on University, which is really unfortunate because it's the only bike route with a name and a logo in St. John, and it connects, uptown and the University. And so I bring in graduate students, some of which are on this call right now from Vancouver and Toronto, and they ask, well, I don't have a car, do I need a car? And I'm like, well, you kind of do need a car, but if you live, on the bus routes that are really busy, it's okay. I would love to be able to say that there's an awesome bike route going all the way from uptown to the University where you can bike, 9 months out of the year. But anyways, just getting to my comments. So I guess I'm a little different from Colin in the sense that the buffered bike lane, I think, is a big improvement over what it is, because I guess it makes me feel a lot more comfortable if somebody's not trying to pass on the right and then they're not looking for bikes at all, and you wouldn't really see them coming either with a rear view mirror. They just plow into you. However, I would like to mention that I don't think the solution has to be the same for the entirety of University Avenue, because this high traffic section right here, it's like, I don't know, maybe 200 meters, and then it goes way down as far as left-hand turns, right-hand turns. Really, this is a Tim Hortons problem by and large. Because, geez, how many cars go through the Tim Hortons drive-through? I would guess probably like 800 or something per day, and that's a substantial portion of the entire traffic on the road. Anyways, I could see a hybrid solution where you had something more like you've got pictured here, just for this one area, and then you go down to, you divert the traffic, all the car traffic to one side for the rest of the University. As a biker, I don't actually, I'd rather have a protected time the whole way, but if I have to be on high alert for 200 meters, I can manage that, and then I can get to my safe place and I can just, kind of zone out on my bike and exercise. So that's my main comment, is I don't think the solution has to be the same for the entire University. I think you can have a different solution for this first, maybe it's only 150 meters, 200 meters, where there's all this turning and traffic that is not quite as good for bikers, and then make something really good for bikers for the entire rest of the way to the University, which is, you know, a couple kilometers or something. So that's my main comment, but I really enjoyed Colin's comments as well as Gina's. And I really want to thank Tim again for arranging this discussion.
Thanks a lot, Scott. And it's kind of neat to see a kind of combination, a few different ideas there. You know, maybe incorporating some of what Colin suggested further down this particular section. So we'll definitely take a look at that. Debbie McCormick, you're up next.
Good evening. Thank you, Tim. I enjoyed your presentation this evening. Tim, I'm wondering how transportation plan ties into the ongoing strategic plan that's being conducted now by the City of St. John. That would be one question I have. And with regards to Woodhaven, there's a lot of traffic. That's the only, as you know, the only entrance and exit. They only have that one. And so it's quite busy. And I will say that it's not just a Tim Hortons problem, because I happened to be getting my husband a Tim Hortons at 3:30 the other day, and I could not believe the traffic congestion turning left to go on to Millage Avenue. I was lucky. I was going straight, so there was no problem at all. So did you say that you did when did you do the last assessment for traffic? 2012?
The assessment we did right at the intersection itself was back in 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, the counts that were further along University Avenue were done just within the last 5 months.
Okay. I really think that could use another evaluation, frankly.
Okay.
In terms of, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and certainly that threshold we were looking at was that 20,000 vehicles a day is what you typically need for the 4 lanes. But we'll take that advisement in terms of perhaps doing an update to it. And to answer your question, Debbie, I'm not sure. Do you have more? Or is that it?
No. Well, the only thing I'm thinking too is actually when we look at, it would be nice sometime, Tim, to review some of the policies with regards to sidewalks and things like that, because, you know, I've been trying to get a sidewalk on the Boarstead Road since 22 completed. And so it's always nice for the citizens to have an idea of what the timeline is when we're doing restructuring, resurfacing and things like that.
Oh, perfect. So to answer one of your questions there about how the transportation plan ties into the strategic.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. So every plan that we have is kind of being pushed up into the strategic plan. So the municipal plan, the transportation plan, a recreation plan, etc. So there'll be components that'll come directly from the transportation plan that'll make its way into the strategic plan. Although one of the interesting alignments is going to be just overall how our investment is going to look in the city of St. John and into the future. So what are the priorities of our community overall? How do we best use the minimum or the limited tax dollars that we have to invest? And how does that going to inform transportation plan improvements, but also, you know, $1 can only be spent on a transportation plan versus a recreation project. So it's all those plans going up into the strategic plan that's really going to be the overarching informant of how we actually implement these various other plans, such as the transportation plan. So I know one of the things we struggled with is prioritizing the transportation projects and the transportation plan, because you really need that overall view of the community in terms of where the priorities are. So that's kind of where the tie-in is. And just your point around like the Boar's Head Road sidewalk. Again, one of the things we looked at as part of Move SJ is an infill strategy for sidewalks. So identifying where the high priority locations are that don't have sidewalks, and then prioritize those in a framework so that again, there's better guidance as to where different infills of sidewalks occur. And again, we're doing a much better job. Again, some of it's coming from some of the partnerships from the province and the federal government, as well as our asset management program, to look further out into the future beyond 1 or 2 years in terms of where our capital investments are going to be. So we'll start to see in our financial plan as well. So we'll start to see a much longer time frame where some of the potential improvements in infrastructure are going to happen to give better insight to the community. So thanks a lot for your comments there, Debbie.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Councillor McKenzie.
Thanks, Tim. Really appreciate your presentation, and we've gotten some great feedback tonight. I'm going to leave the traffic strategy and bike strategy up to the bikers and yourself, but the walking is, Gina brought it up, you know, and we've talked about this before, Tim, the idea of repaving a street to give it that 20-year lifespan or 15-year lifespan before you have to reconstruct, but not doing the sidewalks when you do the street, gives the sidewalk that chance to sink down. And actually, Gina's right. You know, in a lot of places, even over here where I live, the sidewalks are level with the street. So I guess my suggestion is that I know that we can't reconstruct the street right away, but if we're going to put in a buffer or we're going to do some work, can we take and at least put a thin layer of asphalt so that senior citizens with walkers and wheelchairs and those sort of things can get from point A to point B? Because that is a big concern out there, along with, you know, other active transportation. So I'd just like, I mean, I mean, the comments that are coming in, the suggestions are absolutely perfect. But that's just my concern is that, you know, we need to think today about the sidewalk situation, as Gina pointed out, and if we can't put a new one in, and I know we can't, can we at least level the one out that we have so that everybody can use it? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Council. It's maybe just a suggestion of again, we'll look at it, but the idea of almost like an extra layer of asphalt on top of the sidewalk to create a bit more separation plus smoothness. So definitely great idea there. Just looking down the list, a few hands up, but I think they've spoken. Dean Price, is this your hand up from before, or do you have something else?
Yeah, I have something new. So Tim, so one question, who is your cyclist that you're designing this for? Are you designing this for an old guy who's been cycling for 40 years like me, or are you designing this more for 12 and 13, 14-year-olds? Because obviously bike lanes are better than sharrows. Of course, as you know, sharrows are not very good for anything. Everybody in North America kind of agrees. Bike lanes are a little bit better, but like the other folks are saying, when you have people driving quite fast, the bike lanes don't provide a whole lot of comfort to less experienced cyclists, right? And in my opinion, you should not be designing cycling infrastructure for people like me, because I've been cycling a long time, and you know, we're not really the people you should be designing for. You should be designing for the inexperienced cyclists and the younger things. Like, if your 10-year-old kid won't use that facility, then you shouldn't build it, in my opinion. So that's why I fully agree with what Colin was saying. And when I signed on to kind of listen to this talk, I was hoping that you were going to say all the cars are on one side, and then on the other side is for pedestrians and cyclists. So because you're going to do two things there. You're going to do traffic calming. When you have the cars going opposite each other, that's automatically going to slow down those cars. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to create a much safer environment on the other side for the cyclists. And the third thing you're going to do, if you're taking 2 car lanes and you're making it 2 bike lanes and then a wide sidewalk, you have lots of room there. I don't know if this is the right idea. I haven't looked at this, but you could have the pedestrians use the former street if some of the sidewalk was not feasible to repair. But anyways, that's a detail that you could work out. But I'm just saying, if you had 6 or 7 or 8 meters of asphalt, you could definitely have space for 2 bike lanes and a walking area for people. And that's a facility that people get excited about, because if we're just doing something that's okay, it's not going to excite people too much. I think everybody in North America and the cycling community agrees, cycling lanes that are separated from cars, that's what people want. And if you can do that without spending millions of dollars, that's exactly what people want. That'll make people excited. Otherwise, you know, a lot of the bike lanes we have in the city now are okay for experienced cyclists, but the inexperienced people don't like them. And that's the truth. Anyways, that's my comments. So I think if you can figure out the left turning traffic jams at Tim Hortons, put all the cars on one side, that's what people will be excited about. And who knows, you might have enough space people can play road hockey on the other side of the street too, if they want to, right? Just like when I was a kid back in the 70s, we played road hockey in the street and nobody ever hit us. Imagine that. Anyways, I'll shut up now. Thanks.
No, thanks, Dean. And again, I think maybe another vote there about looking at something in terms of one side. Again, maybe going back to Scott's comments earlier about maybe a hybrid between the two might be an option. So we'll take that back for sure. You know this. I've thought a lot as well as you, and I think I'm sure a lot of people on the call here about you know the type of cycling facilities we want in our community. You know, as traffic engineers, sometimes we look at it from a risk perspective. And certainly from a cycling perspective, that's what we look at it from a risk perspective, right? So as you increase volume, as you increase speed, etc. on the street, that's where you start to warrant, you know, up to a separated cycling facility. But as Dean mentioned, and I've thought about this absolutely as well, I fully agree that, you know, if we're trying to get more people to cycle in the city, you got to get to the point where we become an inexperienced cyclist to an experienced cyclist. And certainly if we don't have cycling facilities that are separated and you know tailored towards those inexperienced cyclists, you'll never build up that community of cyclists within the community. So I think University Avenue, I think we talked about that in terms of options, but certainly your notion there about you know defaulting wherever possible to off-road facilities or off-street facilities. You know, definitely it's crossed my mind as absolutely as well. And certainly the opportunities there are whenever we're reconstructing a wide street where we don't need that fourth lane and we can do some type of road diet and actually reduce the width of the road and create something. What we've done with Harbor Passage, only use that model in other parts of the city by creating an actual separated, protected cycling facility. Again, to tailor towards cyclists of all abilities, and to build up the people who cycle in our community and want to become experienced cyclists sometime down the road. So great comments there. Melissa Morrison.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. Great presentation. I am actually one of Scott Pavey's grad students from Vancouver, and your presentation did address a lot of my concerns around pedestrians. I do agree with kind of this buffered bike lane. It would be nice to have some separation. Even as an experienced cyclist, I don't know how safe I would feel. I know throughout the city, I don't feel safe at all. And I can't even imagine for someone who isn't experienced. So yeah, if there's any way that you can separate it either at the curb or by having it on the other side. And then you had mentioned bike boxes, and do you have any plans to have a bike box so you're turning for people turning left to the hospital? Because that is also an area where, as it is now, of course, with the 4 lanes, it's quite dangerous if you're turning left off of University Avenue. So yeah, I think having a bike box there, in addition to reducing down to the 2 lanes, could be useful. And then my last comment is around the Millage Avenue intersection itself, just around the lights, like the programming of the lights for pedestrians as it is now. I don't know if that is something that you're planning on addressing in the future, but as it is now, the way the lights are programmed, basically both directions of pedestrians have to cross all at once, and if that could be fixed. Yeah, that's all I have. So thank you very much.
No, great suggestions there, Melissa. And no, we never thought about that bike box idea down at the hospital, but certainly there'd be a lot of cyclists going up towards the hospital or university that would be making that left-hand turn, and obviously the space is there because of the break in the median. So we'll make note of that opportunity. Yeah, in terms of the lights at University and Millage, this is it's an interesting debate. It's not quite a scramble walk like we have at Yonge and Dundas in Toronto, but it's a pedestrian phase where the lights are red in all directions to allow pedestrians to cross on all four legs of that intersection. And it's certainly an interesting debate in the community because you do create that red light for all directions with what we have there now, which also prevents the left-hand turning issue. So vehicles aren't turning left or right into your crosswalk because they're facing a red light. But what it does do on the flip side, and this is a negative, is for anybody who's visually impaired, you don't have that parallel traffic adjacent to you to guide you across the street as a sound source. And again, if you're trying to cross from like a third, three sides to get over, you got to wait through a couple sets of lights to make your all the way across through this pedestrian phase. So yeah, definitely the pedestrian signals that we have there now is something that we've implemented as a result of community requests. But absolutely, when we get the opportunity to reconstruct University at Millage, we'll look at other opportunities. And we've implemented something called leading pedestrian intervals at other locations where they basically have a head start in advance of vehicles will be turning left or right. And a very inexpensive solution that puts the pedestrian out into the intersection, make them more visible. So those are the types of ideas that we certainly could explore when that intersection gets reconstructed. But lots of debate over these pedestrian phases versus the traditional ways of how crosswalk work in the city. So thanks a lot. Kevin Noyles, did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah, you got it good. First off, I'd just like to say that I agree with Dean and Colin that I'm a fan of the bike lane being all on one side. I guess I do have a couple questions though regarding if you're going to do the bike lane the way it is, about protecting that bike lane in certain areas. So my first one would be where you have the merge onto University Ave from Milledgeville. If you don't have anything protecting that bike lane and it's busy, cars are just going to ride up the bike lane that want to go into Jean Coutu. They're just going to be like, oh, I'm only going to be here for 2 seconds. I'm just going to go down this bike lane. I'm going to take a quick right. I'll be out of the bike lane. So if you don't have the budget to use those plastic billiards throughout the whole bike lane, I do think just having them in certain areas can do a big job of protecting the cyclists in that lane without being a huge budget increaser. So areas like that. Another question is, what was the reason for having the bike lane end before the bike box?
Okay, no, great. So, and I think one of the other person mentioned this particular area, I forget who it was, your exact comment about, the safety of the bike lane right in this area. So we will take that into consideration. So I guess even if we implement something like that hybrid model that Scott mentioned about, may have to have it under this design here, then maybe move over to one side of the road further on. Regardless of how we do it, we may have to address this concern that you have. And it's a very short stretch, right? We're talking, just the distance between that right-hand slip lane and the Jean Coutu to put like 2 or 3 or 4 of those plastic bollards during the summer months. So we'll take that one under advisement for sure as a solution to make that safer. Your question around the bike lane ending, so I'm not sure if I got this right or not. Let me know if I didn't, but we did want to reestablish the 2 vehicle lanes at the 2 intersections, right? Because that's where the congestion is going to be, especially down here. So we want vehicles that are going to be turning right from University onto Millage to be able to do that while any cars are waiting to turn left or go straight through the intersection. So that's why we ended the bike lane where we did, just beyond the entrance to the Tim Hortons. And again, it would be a situation where cyclists, if they're going to be turning left, again, this is the Dean's point, this is all about education and experience, but you would use obviously your arm signal, merge into that left-hand lane as a cyclist, and then you would enter that bike box and rest there until that place. But if I somehow got this design wrong, or there's a specific idea to make that improved, I'm all ears.
Okay, no, I just didn't realize it was going to 2 lanes at that point. So.
Yeah. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the traffic volumes are not there to justify more vehicle lanes, but at the intersections, we did want to reestablish it to prevent the congestion. So that's why the design is the way it is.
So is the lack of billiards and a protected lane due to a budget reason? Is that why there's nothing protecting the lanes?
Yeah, so with the bollards, the issue with those is so obviously they have to be looked at throughout the summer months, and they have to be removed for the winter months, right? Because you can't plow around those bollards. So again, for small sections like here, that's something that we can consider. But certainly widespread use of bollards to protect lanes would become an issue because they're going to get hit, they're going to get damaged, need to be replaced, and they would have to be taken out every fall and put back every spring in order to properly plow the street under the current design. So that's the intent. But again, this notion of 4 or 5 bollards in a very small section seasonal, that's something that we might be able to manage as a solution. Again, because you mentioned, and I forget who mentioned it earlier on, somebody mentioned very early on the same issue that you brought up at this specific area. So more manageable in a small location.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak.
Oh, Mike.
Thanks, Tim, and good evening, everyone. I work with Tim as part of the Public Works and Transportation team, and I had to join late. I had another meeting, but I've appreciated the dialogue. Now we do want to try and wrap this up by 8, so I'm going to maybe see if we can bring this to a close. I do note, Kathy, that you had your hand up, I think, for a little while, so I'll give you the opportunity to provide your comments. But after that, we'll have to wrap it up at that. There are those mechanisms, though, to continue to provide your feedback. And again, we will take all the feedback and give it consideration before we do return back to council with a recommendation. Full disclosure, we may not be able to answer every wish here. We do have other considerations and budget constraints as well that we need to think about. With that, perhaps Kathy, if you have a question, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Mike, for recognizing me, because I was in a lineup for quite a while, and I was concerned that I was not going to be able to talk. I'm not really going to talk about biking or the bike lanes at all, because I really don't know anything about that, and the concerns with regards to that. What I am concerned about is University Avenue going down to 1 lane in each direction. And my concerns, I travel University Avenue almost every day, and I don't drive just the first 200 meters. I drive the whole length of it, so I have a pretty good feel for how it's used and whatnot. As everybody knows, the hospital is the largest employer in the city of over 2,000, and they have a lot of shift work. There are times getting to the hospital, there are bottlenecks that occur on various points along University Avenue. And with the survey that was done in 2012, that's a little bit out of date, as multiple people have already pointed out, because of the buildings that on Woodhaven. There's also a lot of buildings on the south of, or potential for development on the south side of University Avenue that will increase the traffic on University Avenue. So my concerns are taking it down to two lanes. Besides the 2,000 employees, there's patients going there, there's tests to be done, clinic appointments, seeing doctors, visits to ER. It's an ambulance route. It's also a bus route. And there are bottlenecks that occur now, and some of those have been pointed out. So my concern is looking around those bottlenecks and being careful, especially if you're going to put more crosswalks in, and during the change of shift, you're going to get more bottlenecks and potential. And I'll tell you, I was on University Avenue today, and there was an accident, and it blocked 2 lanes completely for a length of time, and it didn't occur in the first 200 meters. It was right at the entrance of leaving the hospital entrance on University Avenue. So it was a little annoying to have to stand in line to get out. But that is out as it. But one of the things that also I wanted to bring up is there's a pipeline that crosses Millage Avenue south of University Avenue. And I know the potential of a disaster happening with that pipeline is low, but it's not zero. If that area, Milledgeville or North End, ever has to be evacuated, it has to occur on University Avenue being the major route. There's one other route out, but it would be bottleneck really fast. And I just have concerns if the evacuation route is compromised, that we would be in trouble. So those are just some points I wanted to bring up.
All right, thanks, Kathy, and I do apologize for not getting to you sooner. Trying to manage the list, so apologize for you waiting. And with that, we only have 2 minutes left. I think we've had almost everybody. There's a couple more hands up, but I think most people have spoken. I do apologize if a few people haven't had a chance to speak, but as Mike said, we do want to end this at 8 o'clock. So again, as Mike mentioned, we are going to take all these comments back for sure. And as up on the screen right now, again, we have it open until May the 7th, where you can provide any additional feedback to, again, feedback@stjohn.ca. That's available right now. We will be posting this meeting as well as the presentation on our city website, probably tomorrow or Friday, so people can review it there as well. And we invite comments until May 7th. And again, we'll take all the comments, all the suggestions. We'll implement as much as we possibly can. And again, we need to make sure that the system remains balanced for everybody. And again, as Commissioner Huguenot's mentioned, we do got to make sure that we can afford to design, build, and look after whatever we build in St. John. So appreciate all the comments, very respectful, a lot of excellent ideas tonight, and a lot of alignment as well. So thank you, everybody. And with that, I am going to end the presentation, and good night, and hopefully talk to you soon. Thank you very much.